morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe has become one of those countries obsessed with appearance, to the point where the regime is spending millions of dollars on public relations related activities just to bolster the country's image and forgetting the reality. One of the areas where the regime has done this is in the economy. The regime is determined to project the image, the narrative, that Zimbabwe's economy is booming and the country is on course to become an upper middle income nation by 2030. This is just propaganda. Nonsense. Here is a video clip of somebody in the banking sector in Zimbabwe telling the truth about the Zimbabwe economy.
Make a comparison between Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Zambia. So when you look at GDP size, I've spoken about it to say GDP size, we are almost twice as big as Mozambique and Zambia. But look at the deposit level. Deposit for Zambia is $8 billion. For Mozambique, it's almost $12 billion. For Zim, $4 billion. That becomes a problem. So what it simply means is we could be having significant amount of money outside the formal banking system. The problem with that is that when you look at our credit at 2.5 for the size of the economy, it means a lot of businesses are struggling to access that credit. Preferably at a size of $53 billion, our deposit base should be around $20 billion. That's what this is saying. Our preferred level of deposit should be $20 billion, and our preferred credits in those ratios should be close to $9 billion.
I'll stop it there. This is important. I'm not a banker, but I can relate to that. One of the areas where the regime has exaggerated some of its entries is, for instance, on the GDP. According to some other sources, the GDP of Zimbabwe per capita is a mere 2,000. Sorry about that. Seem to have lost the connection there. This is important. Zimbabwe's GDP per capita is 2,000. And yet, sometimes the regime tries to exaggerate and make that figure much bigger. But this is the data from some other sources. And according to this then, for Zimbabwe to achieve its so-called Vision 2030, to become an upper middle income nation, it must increase its GDP per capita to 6,000 US dollars or more. In other words, we've got to increase our GDP 3 times as much. When Mnangagwa took over from Mugabe in 2017, that's 8 years ago, the GDP of the country was about 2,000. It has not moved much. So in 8 years, the GDP has hardly moved. And somehow we're expected to believe that in the next 5 years, it will increase 6-fold. That is just nonsense. Where will that growth come from? I've said on this site, and I'll say it again, Zimbabwe's so-called Vision 2030 is a mirage. And this video clip is actually giving more information as regard to that. Proof that what the regime says and what is happening in reality, more often than not, are 2 different things. We can flatter ourselves and try to believe that our economy is growing. In reality, it is not. That is the truth. Zimbabwe is a failed state, and as long as we remain a failed state, a pariah state ruled by corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical thugs who are accountable to no one except themselves, there will be no significant economic growth, and the nation will continue to be bombarded by some of these meaningless narratives from the regime designed to give the impression the country is doing well, when in reality, we are not. This is the truth. This is the reality that many Zimbabweans out there really should sit up and pay attention to. We are flattering nobody. We are cheating nobody except ourselves by coming up with all these figures, impressive figures of Zimbabwe's GDP is twice that of our neighbours. When you look at the figures more closely, you realize that that is not the case. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.